It's a special edition of the Chip and Griff show.
That's right.
Today. We just came from the Jacksonville Fire Museum across the way over there by the St. Johns River. We're out here in the parking lot where there's a pretty good amount of rain. The most rain we've seen so far has started up. Weather report's not great. Griff loves it when I start off with weather reports. The weather reports aren't great here this afternoon. A lot of thunderstorms coming in. But we are at TIAA Bank Field, formerly Everbank Field, formerly Alltel Stadium, formerly Gator Bowl, where Georgia and Florida are going to meet in a top 10 matchup tomorrow. Just got some great stuff. I hope you were online and saw our live stream of Tim Tebow. We actually spoke to David Pollock and Maria Taylor earlier. We didn't have the opportunity at that time to live stream them, but we're going to live stream as much stuff as we can. Griff is getting his first experience of the Georgia-Florida game, and having talked to Tim Tebow, he was certainly inspirational, wasn't he, when he was talking about what this game means to him?
Yeah, you know what, Chip? I mean, listening to Tebow talk is where it really resonated for me. When a guy who's played in the NFL, played for the Denver Broncos, which is as rabid of a fan base as you can ever have, that played in, again, for national championship, that played in an NFL playoff game and beat the Steelers, and he's talking about goosebumps and nothing like this game, and said that, it's politically correct to say that they're all the same, but that's just not true. We heard David Pollock say that as well, and we will have video of David Pollock up this afternoon, but I really hope you got a chance to watch that Tim Tebow live presentation, Chip. I mean, Tebow is just such a graceful guy. It just doesn't matter who you root for. There's just not many guys in sports that are as authentic and really broke the game down well, I thought.
Yeah, I thought he did. I thought Marcus Spears did too. Yeah, really Pollock and Maria Taylor did too. These guys, they study a lot. Tebow spit out a pretty good stat for us out there that he had garnered from the LSU game. You'll be able to read a little bit more about that later. Marcus Spears was really, obviously he's an LSU alum, great player for the LSU Tigers. Both of them a little bit critical about the game plan Georgia went in to Baton Rouge with, and they think it's definitely going to have to be a better game plan for Georgia in this game. Sounds like none of them are revealing their picks just yet, but it sounds like there's a little bit of a lean toward Georgia in this game. But definitely all the marbles environment down here, guys. I mean, right over there where we were, you've got the ESPN Game Day bus, you've got the CBS Game Day, sports bus, you've got SEC Nation here. Very, very rare that all three of those entities show up at the same place. Of course, not the greatest weekend for other rivalry games in football. This is the game in the country this year, and it's going to mean a lot, and not just to Georgia, but to Florida, and to the national rankings, and possibly to the college football playoff scene. So, as you can see, it's raining here, Mike. I think weather is going to be a factor. It's not supposed to rain tomorrow. All this is supposed to clear out. Thunderstorms expected this afternoon, probably going to wet the field a little bit, but it's an NFL field, so I'm sure it'll drain just fine. You never can tell when you're here on the Intracoastal Waterway and near St. John's what the weather is going to do. But you were talking about, there's going to be some wind here tomorrow, and that's always probably an underplayed factor in football. Just what do you think about the game conditions, and kind of the things outside of the stadium? You're getting your first look at this whole scene.
Yeah. I think a sloppy field would favor Florida, so I think Georgia needs to hope the weather clears out, because I think Georgia's pass game and the threat of what Jake Fromm can do throwing the football, and also I like Georgia's speed. Florida, I don't think their offense is as dangerous, but you put a wet track out there and all of a sudden that's a bit of an equalizer. I think that would cancel out a little bit of the advantage that I see Georgia having with speed with guys like Mecole Hardman. Maybe see a little James Cook, DeAndre Swift, certainly a burner kind of guy. So I think inclement weather would favor Florida. It was interesting, though, to hear the different commentators talk about this game. It's, and Tebow said, the only time he can remember CBS, I think you asked the question, CBS, SEC Nation, SEC, ESPN's Game Day being in the same place as the national championship. So it almost has national championship fanfare. I'm holding my phone and looking here at my questions. If you have a question for us, Chip and I can read that off of the phone here. So I see that Boo ESPN Game Day can go back home. Chip, I don't understand the mental. You may be able to help me. Why would Georgia fans have a problem with ESPN Game Day or SEC Nation? I mean, I saw Maria Taylor and David Pollock. I mean, those are two really proud Georgia grads. I'm not sure. Is there something I don't understand about Georgia fans being mad at ESPN
Well,
Game Day or
I
SEC?
think fans are fans. A fan is short for fanatic. And actually, I'm gonna. I have a Towers take up later. I'd actually talked to David Pollock and Maria Taylor. At the end of the day, those guys are objective when it comes to their analysis. But they've risen to this level, and let's be clear about it. I mean, this is the top level that there is in sports broadcast journalism. That's two Georgia graduates that are going to be standing up there on that platform and that are up there every week. That's a pretty notable, pretty highly visible situation. And both of them spoke strongly about their education at the University of Georgia and their relationships at the University of Georgia, putting them in that situation. And hey, listen, we talked to Tebow as he was going out. He said, there's some side bets would probably be coming later with Pollock and Maria Taylor. They got bets, Marcus Spears and them. But when they get on set and it comes to the analysis part of the job, all these people are journalists and they're going to be ejected just like Mike and I strive to be every day.
Yeah, and it's hard to do that because sometimes you want to tell the fans what they want to hear, and it's hard to do that because you don't want to mislead anybody. I know one conversation that's ongoing, and Kirk Herbstreit weighed in on it with me earlier this week, and nobody wants to hear that the Georgia running backs aren't as good as Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. They want to pretend that DeAndre Swift and Elijah Holyfield are that good, but I mean, you got two starting NFL running backs that are rookies, Chip, that are number 2 and number 3, and that is a factor. Someone asked on here, was James Amaker wanted to know why they've gotten away from throwing to Hardman. To understand that, you've got to understand Georgia's mentality, and it's a take what they give us mentality. So when Jake Fromm goes to the line of scrimmage, Chip, and it shows double coverage or bracketed coverage on McCole, he's trained to find a better matchup, maybe a one-on-one matchup, as opposed to forcing the ball into McCole Hardman. Kirby has a mentality, right or wrong, and you can agree or disagree, that all these guys are about the same talent-wise, whether we're talking about receivers or a 4-man running back rotation. And he feels like they're all so good, they're all just interchangeable, where I know you and I have talked about, well, maybe you should throw it or direct the ball more to the best players. In Kirby's mind, there's 7 or 8 receivers that he trusts, and there's 3 or 4 running backs that he trusts. So therefore, Georgia's play calling and who gets the ball is determined by the opponent. The opponent is the one that dictates it, and Jake is trained to look for the most favorable matchup. And opponents are like, you know what? We're not going to let number 4, McCole Hardman, be the guy that beats us. You're going to have to beat us with somebody else.
Yeah, and to be clear, they want to get the ball to McCole Hardman. They're trying really, really hard. I think he had 3 touches against LSU.
Yeah.
Georgia wants way more touches, but a lot of that you have to tip your cap to LSU. And Mike pointed out to me, he was the first one to point it out to me that really you trace this, but the genesis of this back to Jeremy Pruitt in Tennessee and what they were doing. They were the first ones to actually bracket McCole Hardman. That's that's basically what they're doing. They're committing 2 defensive players to McCole Hardman every time he's on the field. That's taken away that jet sweep a little bit and a lot of the other things they do with him because they're all predicated on one-on-one matchup. Now, philosophically, that should give them a little more running room, some different things, but they're blitzing and they're playing hard inside, and Georgia's inside protection and inside pass run blocking, just quite frankly hasn't been that great in the last couple of games. It's going to be tough sledding again, tomorrow against Florida. It's a really good defense, and that was borne out again today when we're talking to our analyst here. Is look, this Florida. Everybody wants to talk about their offense, and it is markedly better under Dan Mullen. This is still a defense team, and that's what he's playing to win with defense, and it's been a winning formula 6 out of 7 times. So what Georgia's able to do, I mean, they're going to get everything you can handle from Todd Grantham, whether it be Jake Fromm or Justin Fields, and I think everybody was in agreement here that it's still Jake Fromm's team, but I think a lot of them are expecting to see a little bit more Justin Fields too, and that's a whole nother conversation. What you got there?
Some questions. Someone wants to know again, and I'll explain this again, Chip. Why'd they get away from the run? Well, the defense started to load up the box, and so again, Jake Fromm is trained to go to the line of scrimmage. He's got a run play and a pass play called, And depending on the look that the defense gives, for example, when Georgia had that drive early on, the second drive of the game against LSU, and
nine runs, 10 if you count the holding.
9 runs for 60 yards, and it looked so good, and they did the fake, and everybody said, well, why didn't they just go back to that? They weren't playing the same LSU defense when they went back on the field. It was a completely different look. They went into a 4-down front instead of a 3-down. There were more men in the box. So it's not played in a vacuum. It's not a video game where you can just do whatever you want. I mean, the other team has an effect on what you're able to do. And if they bring an extra defender down in the box, suddenly it's not as easy to run the ball. And we saw that, Georgia had 4 plays for 12 yards running after that. So when people say, why don't they just go back to the run? That's why they lost. It's kind of oversimplifying, and it doesn't really take into account that there's another team on the other side of the ball that's capable of making adjustments. Now,
and to be clear, Jake Fromm, generally is good at that. He's generally good at the decision making and getting the one-on-one matchup for what, he was off a little bit, and I think protection let him down a little bit too. I mean, Andrew Thomas is still a little bit gimpy. He gave up a sack in that game. There was a lot of pressure on Jake Fromm, and then once you start getting pressure, sometimes that gets in your head. The pressure in the environment, he was having to get rid of the ball quick, and I might have panicked a couple times as well.
Yeah, it was tough, especially after you overthrew McCole in that opening drive. And again, I mean, the LSU game, all it does is upset people, and everybody's got their opinions. But moving forward, what we think we're going to see against Florida, Chip, and I can't remember which one of the commentators said it. And I know you and I are going to have it covered. You got Spears and Pollock and Maria talking about Georgia, and I got Tebow and Pollock talking about Justin Fields. And boy, fans are going to wait till they hear what David Pollock said about Justin Fields.
We blew off for Reese Davis. We had so much stuff. We were waiting on Reese. Nothing. We're good.
But I think what the point was is, hey, Florida's coming after Jake Fromm tomorrow. They're going to blitz him, and this is going to be a game where somebody's band is going to play.
Yeah.
And we just don't know which one, right? Yeah. On a lot of plays. In other words, Jake's going to hit some big plays. They're going to hit Jake. There's going to be turnovers. Florida is going to try and erase the run. They're going to load up in the box. I know Georgia fans are going to be out there going, why don't they run it? Why don't they run it? Well, because Florida's going to take that away first. They're going to load the box.
Make Jake Fromm or Justin Fields beat them.
And conversely,
why wouldn't you?
And conversely, I expect Georgia to do the same to Florida. I don't, Kirby's talked all week, Chip, about tackling big and not getting drugged 2 and 3 yards. And we heard Natrez Patrick come out the other day. I don't know if you saw the video, but he said this is coming down to the front 7. We're going to win or lose it because if they can't stop the Florida run game, suddenly Florida's offense becomes a lot more effective.
That's what Marcus Spears was saying, to talk about the flip side of it. He said, hey, now, Kirby Smart, has coached a few big games as well, and they're going to be, he said, I believe it was something along the lines of, Felipe Franks is going to see things he's never seen before because they're going to really be coming after him. Same way. Who do you like better, Jake Fromm and Justin Fields or Felipe Franks? And who is their backup quarterback? I'm not even sure, So, this is going to be, I think it's going to be a real slobber knocking defensive game. It may even have some weather involved in it, depending on how this system goes down here. You got some more comments there?
Yeah, Mark Godfrey wants to know, if they had a fullback block and you can handle the extra man. Well, here's kind of the logic for that, Mark. If you bring a fullback in the game, that enables another defender to go in the box. It's one more guy in the box. They answer with another man. And if you do bring a fullback in, who do you take off the field? Do you take Isaac Nott off the field? Do you take one of those 3 receivers off the field? Because if you've got speed on the perimeter, guys like Godwin, guys like McCole Hardman, guys like Riley Ridley, defenses typically aren't going to try and cover those 3 guys with 3 other guys.
Yeah.
They're going to put 4 or 5 back there.
Yeah.
And so that's how you spread the field. You bring a fullback in there, though, and now you take one of those receivers off the field, all that does is enable the defense to change out a defensive back for another linebacker. So it's not quite as simple as putting a fullback in there, and then you ask yourself, who are you taking off the field to bring that fullback in there? I see here Marshall Fleming says James Cook's swing pass will slow down the pressure. I do wonder, Chip, why we didn't see more James Cook. But, there's people that want to see more Brian Herrien. There's people that want to see more DeAndre Swift. There's people that want to see more Elijah Holyfield. And the bottom line is there's only so many plays to go around.
I think you and I both agree. That's one of Georgia's problems a little bit, maybe with Jim Chaney. Not a problem with Jim Chaney per se, but, I think we're at the point where Georgia needs to pare down the rotation, period. Whether it be at running back, whether it be at linebacker, whether it be at wide receiver. I mean, you got to start making some choices here and going with either the hot hand or going with who you know to be the best players. Perfect example. I've written about it ad nauseum. 1st and 10 at the LSU 38. Love Brian Harrion, love Harrion family and everything else. But Holyfield was the hot hand in that game, not Swift either. And that's who you should, I would have liked to have seen in that situation. That's yesterday's news. The other thing you were talking about is Kirby actually talked about. I believe I was listening to as I was driving down here on the Kirby Smart. It's not really a call-in show anymore, or whatever. The Kirby Smart takes questions from Twitter show. But anyway, somebody asked about the lead block, and he said, you just don't, he touched on Isaac Nauta and Charlie Warner are your lead blockers now, and you actually don't run as much lead. It's today's game is much more about trying to outnumber and get matchups. Now there are occasions where you still lead. There are occasions where you still pull a guard or a tackle or center even, but I mean you don't see that like you used to. It's a different game than we used to see, and that's what's going on with Georgia as well as everybody else.
Yeah, it's really about spreading the field. Chip, I want to touch on the decommitment from Emory last night. I know Jeff Sentell did a great job with that story. I followed up with the story today, and there seems to be maybe some confusion about where Georgia is headed with the running game and how Kirby uses the running backs. And look, there are other great players out there. There's other fish in the sea. But to suggest that this doesn't hurt Georgia is kind of whistling by the graveyard. I mean, this guy's a special running back that looks like he's going to grow into a 220, 225-pound frame. Georgia's going to go out and get another one.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to go get another big dominant back. But to suggest that Georgia doesn't need help in the backfield, you and I have talked about it a lot today. I mean, I think Holyfield and Swift, they do what they do really well, as does Brian Harrion and James Cook. But, you pointed it out. I mean, Todd Gurley was a different kind of running back, and what we saw Nick Chubb do last year at 227. This backfield looks like it needs a big back to me. I know that both Holyfield and Harrion were both stopped on 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1 at Missouri.
Yeah, you could use a little more size out there, and that's the situation right now. I mean, look, with John Emery, I don't think it's over either, and recruiting as ever is a drama. It's a never-ending drama. Commitments aren't worth it. They're not even written on anything, right? I mean, so I was shocked that Georgia got a commitment from John Emery. I was not shocked that they got a decommitment from John Emery. And likewise, I mean, if Georgia goes in here and beats Florida, and runs the table and goes against Alabama in the SEC championship game, LSU loses to Alabama, drops another one somewhere along. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back. I mean, it's a never-ending drama. That's why we love recruiting, right? That's why everybody enjoys it, because it's actually it's a real life drama that we get to watch unfold in front of us. And that said, I also think Georgia's gonna find another running back. If it's not John Emery, last time I checked, Georgia tends to do a pretty good job of finding running backs. They're going to sign one in every class, and last time I checked, none of them suck. I mean, Tay Crowder even was a pretty good back. They just needed a linebacker, and he wasn't going to fit in. So I don't lose much sleep about it, and I don't think you guys should either.
Yeah, I think their backs are adequate, but not great right now. Especially
you've been consistent on that from the beginning. You love James Cook. You like to see a little more of him.
I would like to see, and I'd like to see a healthy Swift. I mean, to me, that's what's really hurt. We haven't seen a healthy DeAndre Swift. I mean, he's down more than 2 yards per carry, and when this guy's healthy, and I think we saw it against Vanderbilt. And I speculated that because it was a night game, he's got a groin injury that it takes time to loosen that thing up. I mean, this kid's going through a lot to play. I don't think people realize just how much treatment is involved with a groin injury, and just how painful this thing is, and how it limits a guy's ability to be explosive. I mean, it's along the lines of a hamstring, essentially, in terms of how it hobbles a guy. So the fact that Swift is out there playing is huge, but they really need him at 100%, and really need that dynamic that he brings, because right now that's missing. I think that's an area where Georgia could really use Swift to get healthy. And again, I'm really surprised we didn't see James Cook touch the ball at LSU, because I think he's a home run hitter, Chip. I think he's a threat to score. We saw a 72-yard run against Vanderbilt that got called back, right?
Yeah.
Because he stepped out of bounds. So I'll be interested to see the game plan. Also, I'll be interested to see how early Justin Fields get in. I reached out to some coaches I know and tried to get their opinion on this game. And they think maybe Justin Fields will be in the game earlier because of what he brings to the Georgia offense. Now, the question is, how does that affect Jake Fromm? And Can Jake get in rhythm with his receivers? It's a lot. Be honest with you, it's a lot for Georgia to solve in that 2-week window since they played LSU.
And you'll, if you saw our stream from over there of Tim Tebow, he touched on this live, but Michael will recount it all for you later in a story in Dog Nation, and certainly some more video there. But Tim Tebow had this exact situation as a freshman at Florida.
Yeah.
Chris Leak was the starter. He came in. He was like Justin Fields. He was the highly touted guy. They had a package for him. One of the things he said that he thought was really important that helped them in that situation was Urban Meyer and Dan Mullen explained how they were going to use them each week and had a specific plan. Like, we're going to bring you in these situations, in these packages and that. And I mean, I'm sure Georgia's doing the same thing with Justin Fields, but, I would like to see, a little bit more of a concerted effort to get him some specific plays and build a little bit more out of whatever package you're doing. I do not like the 1 in, 1 out stuff. Even 2 in and 1 out is not great for me. So, but hey, these coaches are breaking it down every day, and at the end of the day, they're trying to win the game, and they're trying to keep both these quarterbacks confident and engaged.
Well, and Tebow had another good point. He said, "My freshman year, I just wanted to help the team, and
it's up to those guys too, right?"
And he said, "It's my job. If I only get one play, it was my job to go out there and make the most of that play." So Coach Meyer would put me back in.
Yeah.
And then that's the approach you want your guys to take. You don't want to, I was promised this, or I think I deserve that. And I haven't heard or seen any of that from Justin Fields, but I know a lot of fans.
I haven't heard a whole lot from him at all.
Well, yeah, we don't talk to him, but a lot of fans have speculated, if he doesn't play, he's going to transfer and this and that. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. He might have the Tebow attitude. Yeah. He might have the attitude that, hey, it's my freshman year. I just want to make the most of it, help the team however I can. And if I get a play here, it's my job to make the most of that play. So I go back in and because that's how Tebow approached it. And, I know a lot of Georgia fans don't necessarily like Tim because of the rivalry. But again, Chip, I mean, there's a reason this guy is so revered and respected. And he is a team guy. And it does take that to win championships. And right now, Georgia's being tested. That's something you talked about earlier. And I think you talked about it in your Towers Take the other day as well.
That's right, and you'll hear more about it from me in the next 48 hours as we lead up to 24 to 36 hours, I guess you should say, till we lead up to the end of this game. It's a huge game. You can't get any bigger than this. This is really punching the ticket to the East, in my opinion. I have great respect for Kentucky, and I know how much heck they give Georgia every time they go up there to Lexington. It's just, and they have more hope and more. Really more bullets than they normally have this particular year. But I do believe this game, for all practical purposes, is a visa stamp game. This is the way you get to Atlanta, is by winning tomorrow. Both teams know it. I think you're going to see them. It's kind of interesting. Tebow talked about this, and I've heard a little bit of chatter up in Georgia. Nobody wants to see a fake field goal fail like Georgia did. But both of these guys, you got to pull out all the stops in these games. So it's going to be a slobber knock game. And short of that, you got to pull out all the stops. So I think we'll see some wacky stuff in tomorrow's game.
Yeah, Zach Smith says Ridley is our most physical receiver. I hope he gets fed like he should tomorrow. I agree. I think Riley Ridley is a guy that can be a game changer. What do you have, 6 catches in the national championship game after having 8 all of last season? I think he's kind of been a missing component, especially now that they're bracketing or double covering McCole Hardman. This presents opportunities for Riley Ridley downfield. And, we've seen him make some great catches, Chip. He is a big athletic receiver, and I think he could be a game changer tomorrow. Looking at this saying...
Let me interject on that real quick. We only got 1 minute left, so we're going to have to go away and you get that question. But, I think one of the things you're talking about, we'd like to see him get the ball more. Everybody's saying that on a lot of different players. Georgia only had it like 61 plays or something against LSU. That's one of the problems, too. You need to possess the ball, be able to get to that many weapons. Well, this will be our last one right here. We're going to have to wrap it up.
Yeah, and I'll put these fears to bed here. William Morgan says top backs will stop coming to Georgia if they can't get more than 6 or 8 carries per game. There was a time I would have agreed with that, but what we're seeing more and more now, and it's a trickle down from the NFL, are these running back committees. And actually, in the John Emery story, I pointed this out. Emery was fine with the committee. That had nothing to do with his decision, because these backs realize they don't want to carry, necessarily for 5,000 yards in their college career, because that's mileage.
Yeah,
and they want to get to
mileage off the tires.
They want to get to the NFL. So I do think there's something to Kirby's platooning. There are certain times I'd like to see him go with a hot hand. And listen, Chip, I think this staff is great. I think Kirby Smart has an excellent football staff. I think this is a challenging year because of all they lost. The fact that they're 6-1, after losing 5 of their front 7 and 2 NFL running back, 2 starting NFL running backs, an NFL receiver. I think they just look so good and just rolled over everybody. We forgot just how much they lost, and now we're at the part of the schedule where they're playing teams that have better athletes than the ones they played earlier.
Being exposed a little bit.
All that said, and I know you'll give your pick, all that said, I like Georgia to win this game. I think Kirby Smart's got a great plan. I think it's a must-win game. I think when push comes to shove, I think these kids will step up. I just think Georgia's a program going in the right direction, and I just don't think Florida's on par with them yet.
I agree with everything that Griff said there. And, on the running back thing, let me tell you what works for Georgia recruiting right now. It's Todd Gurley, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, all starters in the NFL. That's what John Emery was looking at when he was thinking about coming here, and that's what he's still looking at. That situation's not over yet, and whatever other running back we'll be looking at as well. Georgia's running back legacy is rich. I agree with Griff. I put a score out there now. I'm going to stick with it. I like the score. I don't know how I settled on. I think Georgia's going to cover in this game. I got them winning 31-20, but I think it's going to be it's closer than that. I think because it's been my experience with this game, Mike, and you'll get it in there because of the 50-50 crowd. It's kind of like it's like a heavyweight prize fight, and these guys trade blows. It's good, but when you finally break through, it's usually like a knockout when you realize that you're going down. That's kind of what we saw last year. I mean, they were down 21 points in 7.5 minutes, and then the rest was sort of just furniture. But I don't think it's going to be decided in the first half this time. I think it's going to go to the fourth quarter, and I think Georgia scores late to put them away, 31-20. Final thoughts from Mike Griffith.
I'm going 27-19. I think that Gators are going to have some opportunities, but have to settle for field goals. I think Georgia's
covering that line, though.
I do. I think Georgia. I just think Jake Fromm's going to rebound, and I do think Fields will come in the game and have an effect on it. You give 2 weeks to Jim Chaney and Kirby Smart, and we talked about Chip. They got to make some hard decisions as far as who's going to get the ball. There's only so much ball to go around. I think they're going to make some hard and fast decisions, and I think the defense is also going to do their thing. I wouldn't be surprised to see a defensive touchdown. I think they're going to get to Franks quite a bit. So I got Georgia in this one, 27-19. I can't wait to see the pageantry. I've run into so many great Georgia fans, and I mean, they're just one of the nicest fan bases you'll ever come across. I mean, Georgia people they're so kind, even living in Athens. I mean, I've only been there a couple months, and they've really made me feel at home. It means a lot, coming from another place. You never know what it's going to be like. But this fan base is just so rich and polite and kind, and they're here, they're celebrating, they're excited. And I just think that's going to translate to the Georgia players. They know what's on the line, Chip, and I think they believe in their head coach, Kirby Smart. I do, and I think Kirby's going to have the plan. So 27-19, Georgia.
That's Mike Griffith's pick. We're going to try to check in with you later. You'll see Mike's going to be on with Paul Feinbaum later. You're going to be on the set with him later.
6:15
or so. You can see him on there. He'll probably dress up a little bit more that time.
A little bit more.
Certainly Brandon and Jeff Santel, they're out there at the Dog Nation Invasion event. You can catch them up about 4 o'clock this afternoon from the King and Prince on St. Simon's. You hadn't got a chance to check out the St. Simon's scene yet. Yeah, we're going to go check out RV City after this so he can just get a look at it because there's a lot he doesn't know about this rivalry. St. Simon's, I know, is going to be off the chain up there at Frat Beach and that whole scene up there at St. Simon. Anyway, we got this covered, y'all, from St. Simon's all the way down to Amelia Island and right here, Jacksonville at TIA Stadium. Be sure to check Dog Nation later. Load up that app. He and I will both have stories up there shortly after we go check out RV City. We'll see you next time, y'all. Bye.